right those wrongs that I saw in our city.
Welcome back to another episode of the Randy Wilson Podcast. This is episode 53, and we have the distinct pleasure today to have Mayor Levar Stoney with us. Very happy to have you on today, sir.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I want to make sure you know that you've joined Virginia's #1 podcast for hip hop culture and dialogue. And so
that's what I heard.
Yeah, so it's a pleasure to have you on because we definitely believe that you are from our culture. And so we're pretty much the same age. So I think it's going to be great for our demographic to be able to have you speak to some of the things directly today. And we're going to touch into some other things about you as well so that our demographic can become more familiar with you on the personal side.
Cool.
But I know that we are on a tight schedule because you're a busy person. So I'm going to get right on into it, okay? Make sure for those of you who are tuning into this podcast that you subscribe to the Randy Wilson Podcast. This podcast can be found on all podcast channels. I strongly suggest that you go over to YouTube, though, because then you'll get an opportunity to physically or visibly see the gentleman. All right, but we're going to go right on into it, sir. If I'm correct, you're originally from the 757.
Originally from the 757, yes.
Can you tell me what originally contributed to you coming to the Richmond area?
So let me take you back a little bit. So my family is, my father was born and raised on Long Island in New York. Mm-hmm. That's where I was born as well. Because there was a lack of opportunity in Long Island, my family moved to Hampton Roads back in 1988. My uncle was already down there in the military, and he said, hey, there's a lot of opportunity down here. Y'all should leave Long Island. I know y'all are struggling. Let's come to Virginia. So my grandmother got me and my brother headed down to Hampton Roads. I grew up down there, went to high school down there, went to elementary school through high school down there, went to James Madison University in Harrisonburg, did 4 years there, majored in political science and public administration, and thought, all right, I'm going to DC, right? Every person who majors in political science and they're going to DC. I love government. I love politics, and DC wasn't in the cards. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go to Richmond. My first opportunity that was given to me was to work on a political campaign, John Kerry for president. I moved to Richmond to work on that campaign. Actually, before that, I was a fellow in Mark Warner's office when he was governor. Then I got a job working on a campaign for John Kerry for president back in 2004. Did that, went off to Milwaukee for a little bit during the campaign, then came back to Richmond because I was driving back and forth between Hampton and York County and Richmond for like a month. And I said, I can't do this anymore. Found a place here in Richmond, and that's how it got started.
Okay. All right. Appreciate you giving us that background. And by the way, I should have mentioned this in the beginning. I hope that everybody in the office is good. We're aware that you all had a kind of a COVID scare. How's everybody doing?
Everybody's good, man. Everybody tested negative, but you know what? We follow CDC guidelines, and all of us quarantined for 14 days. And so my last day of quarantine was yesterday. So I'm out. I'm back. Went into the office today, felt good to, breathe in the air, breathing and be around people again, obviously socially distanced. But my recommendation for those who are watching the podcast, who are listening is this: you may test negative, but you got to do the full 14 days if you can. I understand there's some limitations on what some people can do, but we want to make sure we reduce that spread. Got to do the full 14 days.
I see the first thing you did is got the haircut, didn't you? I know that quarantine's tough.
Yeah, tough. Brother. Yeah, I was in a barber shop today. I had 2 weeks. I missed my haircut last week, so I had to get through it. Had to come through.
That's all right. All right. So tapping back into the question in regard to you originally being from the 757. In the future, do you think you'll ever position yourself for any office that will allow you to be a voice for people in your hometown? And or is that important to you when you think about your future?
Right now,
Go ahead.
My focus has been, there's your hometown where you grew up, but this becomes your adopted hometown. I've lived here longer in Richmond than I lived anywhere else in my life. And so I don't see myself ever going back to my hometown and doing anything there, but do I ever see myself doing anything more than being mayor? I mean, that'll be up to the people, I guess, I've been blessed, I would say, Randy, to be elected mayor of Richmond twice before the age of 40 years old. I would have never thought that would have ever happened in my life. that I be elected citywide in the capital of the Commonwealth of Virginia twice before the age of 40. I'm blessed. I'm grateful for that. And whatever I do in the future will be up to, the job I do today. My dad always said this. If you do well in the job you have today, you don't have to worry about the job you're going to have tomorrow.
That's a good point to take away there. If you were not working in government or politics, what would you see yourself doing in your projected career?
Two paths. I was either gone into being a teacher, an educator, whether a professor or in public schools, or I would gone maybe the business route. When I was in college, I really didn't care too much for pursuing anything in business, but I've been around in government. Government kind of opens doors for you to meet a number of people who become entrepreneurs, who start their own businesses, or are just involved in the business sector, period. I would either be an educator or actually go out there maybe and be just as courageous and brave and start my own business. I think starting your own business is the most courageous thing you can do, I think, sometimes, because when you take on a business, man, you put in everybody on your back, basically, and say, you know what, I'm going to be responsible for that person and their family and that paycheck. And that's why COVID-19 has been so devastating, because there's been a number of businesses who've had to close their doors because, revenue is not coming in. And I know it crushes them to go to bed at night thinking that someone who was depending upon them for a paycheck is not going to get that paycheck because of the times that we're in.
Well, with that answer, it kind of leads into one of my other questions. To be good at managing government, do you believe that a candidate needs to have experience in politics? Because as you've seen in the world today, looks like anybody has the ability to become a president.
Yes, that's what we've experienced the last 4 years of incompetence. A person just with a last name and some privilege been president for the last 4 years. Do you need to be experienced in politics? No, I don't think you need to be experienced in politics, but here's what you need, though. You do need to like people, right? I see folks, you don't have to be a extrovert like me, but you got to like people, right? And you got to be able to avail yourself of liking all people, all walks of life. Obviously, you don't want to like someone who is spewing bigotry and hate and division. Not saying to necessarily always embrace those individuals, but when I'm as mayor, I'm the mayor for everyone, for those who voted for me and those who did not vote for me. And I'm charged with working just as hard for those who didn't vote for me as I do for the folks who did vote for me. Nowadays, I see in politics is, I got elected by this segment of the population, and that's all I'm going to do is work for those individuals. And I think politics and the greater good, we should expect more from our leaders in that. So no, not just politics, but you gotta like people. Okay.
And I'm sure it's been challenging for you as the mayor, even though you mentioned that you're a mayor for all people. I'm sure it's been challenging. And as I get through the conversation, I'm gonna ask you some questions about that, just because you've had to experience dealing with circumstances where all people didn't like you, but you've had to, continue to do the work. So I'm gonna go there later, though. I'm gonna try to stick to the script, just because I know that we're on a really strong timeline here. But you spoke about being mayor of the city of Richmond twice now before the age of 40. So either you've been very strategic about your steps toward political office, you've had a lot of favor and a lot of blessings. I don't know. I don't know what all the ingredients are that was contributed to how you've got here. But what is your advice for a young 20-something-year-old person who has maybe the same aspirations in their career to be in a position such as yourself?
I think sometimes when you talk about when people hear the word ambitious, they treat it as if it's a 4-letter word. And I think what I would want is I want young brothers and young sisters who are in college, I want them to be ambitious. Because there was a moment in time in our history when there was a dream. If a young brother had a dream, then they would say like, "Yo, you can't do that." Because people, the way I grew up, growing up on free and reduced lunch, with a father who never graduated from high school, a grandmother who never graduated from high school, I mean, they put their dreams on the back burner so I can actually get to do what I'm doing today. And so if you have a dream, if you are ambitious, embrace that. Embrace it. But here's the thing. Don't plan out your life. Don't sit down and make an outline of where you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Keep the goal in the front view, but buckle up for the journey, because the journey will be circuitous. It's going to take you to places that you've never been, ups and downs, mountains and valleys, but just buckle up and just be along for the ride. Because folks want to be very, when you start planning it out methodically and being choosy here, you're going to miss an opportunity along the way.
I appreciate that. I think that will speak to a lot of people, not just people in politics, but even people who have just aspirations in regard to their life in general. And I think that'll be very helpful. You mentioned a few minutes ago being a mayor for all of Richmond. When you were campaigning, I recognized someone asked you something related to why people should vote in re-electing you as mayor. And I particularly remember you stating that your job was not done yet. It appears that the city and majority agreed and have granted you obviously the opportunity to complete the job. Can you speak to what you desire your legacy to be as Richmond mayor after the next 4 years, and what results will contribute to you leaving your seat feeling like you completed the job?
Yeah, I ran for mayor again because the course hasn't been finished, right? And I'm not one to run back to the sidelines after jumping in an arena. And so for me, there's some who already want to write my biography. Some were trying to write my obituary already before the re-election. And some would say that I will be defined by removing those racist Confederate monuments or Monument Avenue throughout the city of Richmond. And although removing those racist symbols will always be a part of my legacy as the mayor of Richmond, I would rather be remembered for more than that. I would rather be remembered for working on the substance and closing closing the gaps and those disparities between Black people and white Richmonders, as well, Black Richmonders and white Richmonders, or between the have and the have-nots. And that, for me, means working on things like public education, how we go about transforming that, or at least put us on the path to transforming public education, giving more opportunity to Black and brown people, or housing as well. We're in a housing crisis right now, which has been exacerbated by the pandemic. How we go about building more affordable housing in the city of Richmond, how we go about transforming public housing in Richmond. That's what I want to be known for. I want to be known for the creation and the generation of generational wealth for Black and brown people in this city. There's been a number of discriminatory policies and laws in the past, redlining, you name it, that have basically put a ceiling on generational wealth in the city of Richmond. As we develop and grow as a city, I want to ensure that we actually achieve economic justice and economic empowerment for those who've been long marginalized. If I can look back and had 8 years of doing that, putting Richmond on the track to ensure those who've been long marginalized actually get more than just their piece of the pie, but receive justice at the same time, then I'll be very, very proud of my work.
Thank you. I think this is a great opportunity for me to kind of do a segue, like a public announcement, a little bit of a commercial for the people who are listening. I interview a lot of people. I try to be very broad and diverse on behalf of the people I interview. When I reached out to Mayor Stoney, he was very receptive and happy to be a part of the show, and I appreciate it, as well as his team. The communication was great. I want to share this with people because I think it's important for them to understand how these things happen, because a lot of the questions I'm asking you are from the people. I ask the people, what kind of questions would you like me to ask Mayor Stoney? And so you're answering those questions. But I also want to give people kind of a heads up and understanding how I have to conduct this conversation. Mayor Stoney is extremely busy. We are on a time period, as you would imagine anybody in a position in a position like himself. So for those people out there who are going to be critical of me and not going back and forth, I don't have time to do that because I have to ask all the questions that you have, okay? But I do encourage you that you respond, you get into the comments. If you have feedback, you reach out to his office, but particularly, and I'm gonna send this out because That's what I've noticed, Mayor Stoney, that people won't. I ask questions with the goal of getting answers. I feel like I'm doing my job if we further the dialogue and people continue to build in that conversation. But I just want to make sure people understand that I don't have time. Mayor Stoney doesn't have time in the context of this moment for me to really be able to challenge all the conversations, because I know there's a lot of people out there who contributed questions, who are extremely passionate about some of these questions. Quite frankly, probably more than I am to some degree. And I want to be respectful to them to make sure their questions get asked and that you're able to answer them. But I also want to make sure I put these people on alert. Be careful in judging me, because I'm not arguing all the way through your fight. The questions I'm asking are specifically and intentional to the question that you've asked. So I just want to make sure, because, regardless of who I interview, Mayor Stoney, regardless of who I interview, there's some things that I can't be engaging enough or confrontational enough for people. And I feel like that's very important in a conversation such as this, because these are real passionate questions that people have on behalf of the city of Richmond. So again,
and Randy, also, and Randy, what I'll say as well is that what I hope is this is not the first and last time that we do this.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not.
Right?
Definitely not. Yeah. And so, I give it to the people. Continue to engage in the conversation as you see in this show, so that, and Mayor Stoney he'll be able to respond as well, so that he can see your feedback to your questions. It is your city. He's just doing his job. Okay. So, Mayor Stoney, what do you feel like, and these are all the people's questions, what do you feel that are the biggest issues right now facing the city? And how do these items stack up when focusing forward with your administration's priorities in this upcoming year, or this upcoming next 4 years?
Yeah. Well, the number one issue right now is this pandemic, bottom line. There are some people who want to rush back into normalcy, but I don't foresee us getting back to normal anytime soon. Right? Because I know there's some work that's on a vaccine that is 95 and 90% effective. That has to get into people's arms first before we can get back to any sense of normalcy. So I know folks want the kids to go back to school in some way, somehow. Can't do that until we actually have a vaccine and we can all feel safe and confident in going back into restaurants at full tilt, or going back into to doing events, or going back into schools or anything like that. So number one is that. But also the pandemic also exacerbates and also illuminates some of the inequities we've seen in our society and our city for a long period of time, which I'm glad now is all on Front Street, right? Because it gives elected leaders like me the room and the runway necessary to tackle these problems head on. So housing is one of those issues. We've seen an eviction crisis that we started working on prior to the pandemic, but it's been put on Front Street because of the pandemic. So we're going to start working on housing. The more housing, more affordable housing you make and create to the marketplace, the less you'll see folks will be engaged in the court system through the eviction process, or also homelessness as well. We need to build more housing in Richmond, bottom line. My goal was to build 1,000 affordable housing units in Richmond for each year. We need 10,000 units by 2030. So housing's at the top of the list as well. Also, we got to look at how we go about reforming and reimagining policing as well. That was a major topic during the summer after the murder of George Floyd and a number of Black men in this country. We have to have an honest conversation about how we go about policing our communities, Black and brown communities in our city. But what I hear from people, Randy, is this: they want the police department, they need the police department, but they want the same damn police department that shows up in the West End in Richmond to show up in the East End and the South Side as well. A department that's going to treat them with respect, and a department they can trust. And yeah, we might be accredited by national organizations, those who accredit police departments, but at the end of the day, the only accreditation that matters is the accreditation of the people. And that means we got to reform, we got to fund the changes we want to see, and reform the way we deliver public safety in the city of Richmond.
Okay, so I'll stay with housing there for a moment. Housing and poverty was the main topic that continued to come back to us as a discussion point for our conversation today. Housing costs are rising in Richmond, and many Richmonders are not making enough income to remain in the city of Richmond. In your position as mayor, like, what are we doing that's going to contribute for these individuals to remain? I know you just now spoke about increasing housing. 10, I think, did you say how many thousand per year did you say?
We need 1,000 per year over the course of the next decade.
So
because Randy, believe it, 45% of our citizens spend more than 35% of their yearly income on housing and housing costs.
Okay, so as you answer this question, I'm gonna combine two questions here, because one of the questions I had is what is missing in Richmond, and what is missing, what is the missing piece that's gonna take us to greatness? And so if we're gonna talk about in housing, we got to talk about jobs, and you have to look at the demographic that you serve in the city of Richmond in regard to what is considered jobs that they can actually, get. That's going to allow them to be able to take care of themselves. So can you kind of combine both? I'm sure jobs it has to be part of your answer, but can you combine, because I think a lot of people who did not agree with the Navy Hill project didn't agree with it because they felt like it wasn't going to contribute jobs to the people in Richmond who needed them to be able to stay in the city. So can you speak to that whole piece? I know that's kind of a two-parter there.
Yeah, what the jobs aspect and the housing aspect was the impetus for me behind Navy Hill, right? Navy Hill was going to projected to create 10,000 jobs, put $300 million into the pockets of business owners, those who own Black and brown businesses in the city of Richmond. To me, economic development has to mean economic justice. It has to mean economic empowerment. Only way you get that is by using, I believe, the properties and the land that we own in the city to serve as an economic stimulus in this economic downturn right now. What also was an impetus was that we knew that we would end up in another recession one day. How do you go about insulating your city from another downturn? I wish I could look out my window out of City Hall and see more cranes in the sky in downtown Richmond, outside of VCU building new buildings that will be tax exempt and bring no revenue to the city of Richmond. Instead, that's not happening. And so for me, every individual who lives in Richmond should have an opportunity to work in Richmond and live in Richmond. That's not the case for a lot of our people who live in the East End and South Side. A lot of them have to jump on public transportation, GRTC, and get to a job in Short Pump or in Henrico County or in Chesterfield as well. And so, no, I cannot guarantee 237,000 people, the success for 237,000 people. But what I can do is remove the barriers to that success. And that's what I want to do in terms of economic development, bringing jobs to the city, but also building more housing at the same time. You should be able, I got employees who work here for the city of Richmond who can't afford to live in the city of Richmond, right? They got the job piece, but they don't have an opportunity to live here. And so we want good wages and we want better housing, bottom line. And so,
is it fair to say that's part of what's missing from Richmond right now?
I believe so, because what I see, Randy, is, the country's been talking about economic inequality for a long time, for at least the last decade or whatever. The gaps are growing between the have and the have-nots, right? The haves have not suffered very much under this pandemic, but under this crisis right here has really had a disproportionate impact on Black and brown people, those who are in that category, the have-nots. That's what I want to work on in the course of the next 4 years, is how we close those divides between the have and the have-nots. And to me, you gotta focus on growing the city, growing jobs, and also creating more housing for Richmonders.
Can you speak to any specific projects or plans that you have in place that's going to help us this year?
Hey, I think we got to look at opportunities. Navy Hill was rejected, but it doesn't change our problems with downtown Richmond, right? We still have a downtown that is on the brink, that has never ever recovered after we saw Tallheimers and Millen Rose and those businesses left downtown, never ever recovered. So we still have a downtown that's underinvested in. We gotta focus on the fix there. We got Greater Scots Addition and near the Diamond that's underdeveloped, that we own all those properties around there. We also have the gas works as well. Stony Point, all the businesses are leaving there as well. These all are potential places where we can grow the city and create good paying jobs for Richmonders right here in Richmond. Here's the thing. The jobs have to be for Richmonders.
Yes.
You have to be able to live in Gilpin Court and be able to walk to downtown if you choose to and work in the city of Richmond. Now those opportunities are not available to those residents who live in Gilpin Court.
Yes, I'm glad to hear you say. I think there's a lot of people out there that's what they wanted to hear. I mean, the jobs definitely have to be for Richmonders.
I don't want to show up to a work site in Richmond and see a bunch of license plates from North Carolina and Maryland and New Jersey and New York. We need to create jobs for people here. You know, I'm just going to be blunt with you about this. I see folks say, oh, help these folks in this foreign country. They need our help. They need our help. No, people in my own city need our help, right? I see these fund drives or whatnot for kids in different countries, different continents across the world. There's people in the city of Richmond living in abject poverty. I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah, we need to help each other. And a shameless plug right here, for those who are listening, I support Community 50/50 very strongly, nonprofit organization who's involved in all the in all the schools throughout the city of Richmond, particularly involved on the north side area, so everywhere, quite frankly. Six Pick program. They also do feedings on 18th in Chicago and Blackwell twice a month. So if you're not familiar with that organization, I wanted to just put that in your ear because it's a grassroots organization that's been around over 10 years now that's doing a tremendous job at actually taking care of the city of Richmond. Mayor Stoney, got a question here for you. I'm sorry, my phone is, I have to go to my phone because they won't allow me to look at my questions as I'm recording. But
you good.
This question is, this question I'm about to ask you here came with a lot of passion from some of our advocates in the community. We have seen continuing efforts and action from our community, from advocates, activists, and community leaders that are pursuing for change. Do you think we have seen the last of the social unrest or protests for a while? Do you think greater community collaboration will help minimize some of the conflict? And can you share your suggestions toward how this can improve?
The protests we saw this summer, I've always believed that is an expression of built up pain and built up the hurt and pain that was received from the injustices that had been unfortunately built into our system, right? Yeah, we removed Confederate monuments, but we also got to root out systemic racism in all of the systems, institutions in our lives, in government, in healthcare, in housing, in education. And there's no better opportunity than right now. As my grandmother would say, you need to make hay while the sun is shining. I personally believe the sun is shining on Richmond right now. And as long as we would continue to be intentional, now I'm emphasis on the word intentional, because we got to be just as intentional as the racists who built the system the way it is. We have to be just as intentional in rooting that racism out. Yeah, so if we lack intentionality and urgency, then yeah, you're going to see some folks continue to express that pain, right? Well, we've become very adept in the city of Richmond, and hell, all across this country. We've been very adept at saying no to the future. I want us to be more adept to saying yes and getting things done. We are very skilled in blocking stuff, right? Navy Hill's a great example, but are we skilled in actually building something and creating opportunity? We're not skilled in that yet. That means it's going to take everybody at the table contributing to this. And here's the thing, you don't have to be an elected official or inside government to actually contribute to the uplifting, those who've been long marginalized. But do I need you to show up and actually make sure you're heard, make sure you're not silenced by other folks saying they speak for mass amount of people? I need you to step up.
Well, I imagine you would have to be impressed of your constituents who showed up during all these protests, because I mean, I've had a lot of people who send in these questions. They They expressed that they've showed up. They've expressed they've been at the table. And one particular person said something to me that really set hard with me. She said, Randy, you're not in the struggle. And I had to think for a minute, what is that? Like, what did that mean? Because quite frankly, I don't want to be misperceived like I'm not struggling. I think we all have our challenges. Granted, I'm fortunate and privileged in some areas, maybe that others are not. But I think what she was meaning is that I feel like I'm doing my part even in using this format for dialogue, but I'm not out in the street necessarily on the front line. I'm not in those places, making those things. And so there's a lot of people who ask these questions who feel like they're in the struggle, feel like they're at the table, and they feel like they're not really being effective. And I don't know really what more. I can't, quite frankly, I can't speak for them really better than they can speak for themselves. But I get the impression that they feel that they've been heard to a point of where they just don't want to be heard anymore. And I'm speaking particularly for the activists in the community, the advocates, because my take on it is this, Mayor Stoney. I feel like a person in your position is not responsible for making all the decisions, but you are responsible for having to answer the questions.
Yes.
And so all I ask of you is, first off, I appreciate you answering the questions, because your team didn't question me on any of my questions, which I appreciate. I appreciate you answering the questions, but I just encourage you, which I believe that you will, continue to put yourself in those places with those folks who are aggressively, in some ways, trying to make sure that their voices are heard.
Mm-hmm. And can I say something, Randy, to that? And that is, we don't pre-screen the questions when we come on shows like this. That wouldn't be authentic, right? That would take away from the value of this dialogue that we're having right here. Yeah. It would not be authentic. And at the end of the day, if I can't take the heat, then I should get the hell up out of the kitchen then.
For sure. And it's a greasy, hot mess right now. It's a greasy mess. But speaking of heat, you took some heat. I mean, I don't know, one of the things I thought about when I was watching some of the speeches, right? One of the things I thought about personally, being that I'm not originally from Richmond either, and my wife reminds me all the time, is that, the position that you was in, particularly in that time down at City Hall, I mean, it's just, I feel like when you're not from Richmond and you're in a position on behalf of the city of Richmond, there's just extra that comes with the territory. Because you definitely did some great things over the past 4 years. I will give you that. You definitely contributed to a lot of great things. But for some people, you're not going to be able to do enough at the end of the day. And one of the things this leads me into is talking about your role and your working relationships with the police department. What areas are we making progress? And what areas do you feel like we still have challenges? You spoke a few minutes ago about the continuing work of the police department. But I think the city saw so many people come and go in that chief role. So can you speak to where we are right now, in your opinion, as making progress with the police department?
Yeah. First, I have to recognize the work of a number of activists and advocates, those who have some expertise as well in academia and whatnot, who've been part of my Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. That will be coming out with a full report. They will be coming out with a full report here pretty soon. And they're going to give us a number of recommendations, basically that will serve as a roadmap to reimagine public safety here in Richmond. And it will range from how we go about using more of a human services lens, a more people-focused approach to keeping our communities safe. How do we go about investing in these long marginalized communities as well? I think these recommendations, I think they'll be strong. And I think we have the person in place in the police chief who will be receptive to reform and reimagining public safety. Here's the thing. I inherit a lot sometimes, and I get to actually make some of the changes over the course of the last 4 years as well. I made the change at the top of the Richmond Police Department because I needed someone who would avail themselves to change, right? I think what I heard from a number of those who were in the street, but just from neighbors in the city of Richmond, whether in white neighborhoods or in black neighborhoods, was like, hey, policing has to change with the times, bottom line. And it's probably long overdue. We got to get more off of the plate of our police officers, right? And push that towards those who have expertise in handling mental health or behavioral health issues in our community. That's where we need to make some of these investments and take some off of the plate of the police department. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. And so if, like I always say, if Eugene, Oregon can divert 20% of their non-criminal calls to a community care team of health experts, of behavioral health, mental health experts, why can't the city of Richmond? Why can't the city of Richmond?
Well, shameless plug here. I have 20 years of experience in executive leadership in mental health. And so I volunteered myself to be willing to be at any of those tables. You know, I've been in a lot of conversations lately. I don't know if you've seen or witnessed any of them on defunding the police. I do believe in police. I believe that we need police. But I do think that there are some areas, particularly rural areas, where there may need to be a revisit the allocation of funds. I think everything has to be evaluated on a daily basis. That's what I believe. But I share that with you because I'd be remiss if I didn't put my name down to say that if there are going to be some things looked at as it pertains to mental health, particularly, or just a different approach, you know, in regard to how certain things are policed, I definitely would be interested in being at one of those tables.
Right.
So I got one more serious question. You know, and then I got a couple little, you know, we end the show with a couple random, you know, get to know you type things. Okay. Advocates for the humane treatment of Richmond City Jail residents. No, actually, I got two questions, and then I'm going to send it up. Food deserts. There's not a lot of, I live on the south side. There's not a lot of grocery stores. Do you have any involvement in trying to contribute to us getting some grocery stores? And I think there may be some issues also on the East End as well.
Yeah, I've actually sat down with, you know, grocery store corporations and businesses at, you know, past conferences. Because, you know, when I go to these business conferences, these business missions, I'm trying to recruit businesses to come to Richmond and invest in the city. Mm-hmm. I've talked to some of these grocery store, supermarket chains, and the one continue the reoccurring archetype here I hear from a lot of them. The theme is we need more bodies, we need more rooftops that we can depend on when we draw that circle, right? There are a couple of our neighborhoods that are starting to grow, but still may not be there yet when they actually, when those grocery stores are making these investments, they need to depend on, I'm gonna have people walking through these doors consistently. So that means, back to one thing that I believe is, the city has to continue to grow. We have to bring more density to Richmond, particularly in the East End and South Side. And as the city grows, there's more multifamily homes, not just single family homes in South Side. They can depend on more bodies entering those doors, and then we'll see more attention from these grocery stores.
Okay.
We got one grocery store that opened up, you know, the 21st Street Market, right?
Yes.
But we got to embrace places like that, right? We got to shop there. We got to buy our produce there and whatnot. And we sometimes fall back into our older habits of going back across the county line to go back to Kroger or whatnot, because that's something we are used to doing. And the prices may look a little bit different too.
Yeah, the fact that there's a Whole Foods on Broad Street is new to me. It was interesting to me though. Like that was, I mean, it was, I look at it as like it's about time, you know, I mean, to just cater to even the VCU students. Okay, last real serious question, and then, you know, we're going to close with some, you know, some closing remarks. Advocates for the humane treatment of Richmond City jail residents have been working to get them released safely since March. If I'm correct, you don't, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you have direct power over the jail, but the sheriff and the Commonwealth attorney do. Have you met with them? Are you satisfied by how they are handling the safety in the jail with COVID?
Yeah, I've met with Sheriff Antoinette Irving on many occasions. When accounts from outside or from within show up in my inbox, obviously it's my job as the representative of the people and as their mayor to ask the tough questions of the sheriff's office and also of the health department as well. because I don't care if you're incarcerated or not, you're still a citizen, right? And if there's a major public health risk or hazard, I'm gonna lean on the expertise of the health director. And from what I've heard from the health director and from the sheriff as well, that protocols have been followed, it fluctuates on how many cases they have. But I think Sheriff Irving is doing everything she can to ensure that if there is disease inside of the facility, that it doesn't get out and infect the entire community, and that we're not bringing disease into the facility as well. We just had a conversation about those who are doing their weekend sentence, right? You know, those who have to show up and do time during the weekends. Well, maybe there's another creative way that we can handle that. And so,
for those people who are living inside, what is the way to manage COVID from spreading while incarcerated?
Well, that's the tough part, right? Because you don't want congregate situations, right? And so you have to isolate individuals if they've been infected, right? And well, some people, they might be infected with COVID-19. They may not have any symptoms at all.
Yeah.
But you still have to be isolated some way, somehow, when you have been infected, so you don't infect the entire population. We do that at our homes. That's why we offer quarantining in hotel rooms for multi-generational families, where you can't isolate in your 2-bedroom or your 3-bedroom, right? So we offer free isolation for them in a hotel room. It becomes even tougher, I think, inside a facility like the Richmond Justice Center.
Well, what I'm hearing from this group that I spoke with, I think what they're looking to see is that in these situations of isolation, just ensuring that these individuals who are citizens, as you mentioned, are being treated with dignity and respect and getting quality health care. And I guess that's, from what I'm understanding with their group, that's part of the reason why they're advocating on what they are, because their information, I guess, that they're receiving or hearing is different in that way. But again, you don't have direct oversight and responsibility with that, but just using your influence in relationships with those people who do, hoping that they are carrying it out. We don't want people down in the dungeon, you know what I'm saying, who got COVID.
That's exactly right.
And dying. And that is the rumor, at least the rumor that I heard. I heard a death. I think I heard of a death, but I heard that there are some people, some family members of these individuals is just upset because they feel like their family is not getting the care they need.
And Randy, I will say, some of those family members have reached out to me specifically. When I was out campaigning or when I was out doing my job in the community, I could be walking through a neighborhood and say, my son is over at Richmond Justice Center and I'm hearing this X, Y, and Z. And so the first call I make is to the sheriff. And it's my job to ask the tough questions.
Yeah.
I may not have full oversight over her because she's an elected official in her own right.
Yeah.
But I can ask the tough questions and be an advocate.
Yeah. Well, Mayor Stoney, I really appreciate you being on the show. Again, Virginia's number one podcast for hip hop culture and dialogue. Tell somebody, if you have any suggestions on folks that you feel like would be great candidates for the show, I'd love to hear that. We're about to end this, but we want to end it in a fun way. We want people to kind of get familiar with your perspective on things that's not the typical of what they hear. So I don't know if you watched Versus last night.
I did it. Was it Gucci and Jeezy? And
Jeezy, yeah. It was an interesting show.
How was it? Because they were burying a hatchet, I heard, right?
It was interesting. It was 2 million people tuned in, and that was on the main channel. It was other channels, YouTube channels that were streaming. But who would you have picked in that? Would you pick Jeezy or Gucci?
Oh, Jeezy.
Okay.
Oh, for sure.
Genre of music?
Hip hop and R&B.
Do you have a favorite hip hop artist as well as R&B?
I grew up on Biggie as my favorite. Right now, I kind of lean towards Drake stuff.
Okay. Okay. I think there's a lot of people out there that would be surprised that you're a Drake guy. I mean, most of us people who are clean cut get.
Yeah, right. Like I like Drake. I think he puts out good music. Now I could really lose some of the stuff they used to beat up on Ja Rule for, right, back in the day, for all that harmonizing. Now everybody does that.
Oh yeah, that's good.
It's interesting how things change.
Yeah, who's your R&B guy? Did you say Drake? Or would you say someone else?
I still am a big fan of Usher.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a Jay-Z.
But also, what's his name? Daniel Caesar.
Oh yeah, I love Daniel Caesar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm Jay-Z. I'm Jay-Z, and I was Jeezy last night. I'm a Jay-Z fan, and as far as R&B, I really like Music Soul Child. He just kind of stuck with me.
That was my dad's. That was my dad's number one.
Yeah. Who do you have, Kobe or LeBron?
I'm gonna say LeBron.
Oh. Okay.
Hey, I think Kobe. Man, Kobe just takes too many. He took too many shots from me.
Yeah.
Too many shots. I think LeBron is the full package. He can dominate defensively and offensively. I think he's, I know I don't want to get into the Jordan, because I still think Jordan's still number one, but I think LeBron's number two.
Gotcha. So you clearly think Jordan is way above Kobe. Because if you go pick LeBron, I mean, we saw the second coming of Jordan with Kobe. Took a lot of shots. He just proved.
Now I know everybody wants to say that LeBron is just a more athletic Scottie Pippen. But I think LeBron is more dominant than Scottie Pippen ever was.
Yeah.
He is in that pantheon of, Kobe, LeBron, Michael Jordan, people who can dominate the game. Wilt Chamberlain.
I would say he's a more dominant Magic Johnson, just because his impact on the game is equivalent in every area that Magic's was, but he's a better scorer. And he can.
Magic's in the pantheon as well. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just a couple more here. We're wrapping up. When you was a young whippersnapper, who was your childhood celebrity crush? Keyword celebrity crush. So I ain't trying to bring any of them ones from high school out. I ain't trying to get in your business. I'm talking about celebrity
crush.
We hear them all. We've heard Neil Long. We've heard, Maya. We've heard Brandy. We've heard them all.
Oh. I was a big Monica fan growing up. My dad used to always tease me about that. And Vanessa Williams as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I got.
And obviously Halle Berry, too. Halle Berry.
Okay. Two more, and we're done. All right. Mm-hmm. Are you on a special, this is in 2020, man, people on they vegans, they vegetarians, they all kind of, people ain't eating bacon and pork chop like they used to, you know what I'm saying, like they was raised. Are you on some type of special eating regimen and workout plan right now?
So I began 2020 as a pescatarian, and then we got to, June and July, and I just threw pescatarianism out of the way. And, so I don't have, but I do more seafood and more vegetables more than anything.
Yeah.
But I eat what I want. I work out. I have not been able to get back to my cardio regimen, but I try to do 100 push-ups a day. Mm-hmm. I've been doing that. I did that during my last 14-day quarantine, 100 push-ups a day. Gotcha. I found how out of shape I've been.
All right, man. I also used to do the pescatarian thing. I just didn't find a good way to supplement what I was missing. And so I started having really bad headaches. And so I stopped. I try not to eat pork and beef, but chicken and fish, pretty much, I'm going to eat it.
It's but so much, you can't have shrimp but so many nights of the week,
Yeah.
After a while, man, I can't do shrimp anymore.
All right. Well, this is my last question, man. I found it so funny. Mark's a good friend of mine. I found it so funny, man, when I was watching the interview. I was watching the interview, and the whole Nick comment, I mean, it was just hilarious to me because I know how much Mark loves the Knicks. And they horrible. They horrible, man. They struggle. They're horrible. So finish this sentence. This is for Mark. I predict that the New York Knicks will.
Wow. Look, for full disclosure, I grew up a Knicks fan. I had a big old Patrick Ewing poster in my room above my bed. I grew up a Knicks fan, but they have not won since I was a kid. So read the sentence again one more time for me, Ren.
I predict that the New York Knicks in 2021 will lose.
They don't lose again. Because the management, I'm a Knicks fan, but they got to change the management. What's his name? Dolan. He need to sell the team, or they need to take the team from him.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with Charles Oakley himself.
Yeah, actually, we have a note out to Oakley, hoping that he responds soon to be on the show because I want to talk to him about that as well, man.
Oh yeah, that would be hilarious.
Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate your time. I want to make sure I'm respectful to your time. I went over a few minutes. I apologize, but your time, I think, is going to be well served in allowing the people to hear from you. So again, thank you very much for being episode number 53 of the Randy Wilson podcast. And for all of those who are listening to this episode, please drop down and hit the subscribe button. Tell somebody to tell somebody. And if you have any recommendations for guests, please let us know. Do you have any ending words, sir?
No, Randy, thank you for the opportunity, and let's do this again, okay?
Sounds good. We will be in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
Have a good day. Yes, sir.